Hi, I'm Dr. Sanjeev Goel, and welcome to this week's episode of the Peak Human Labs podcast. I recently had a chance to record a webinar, which I think you're going to find really interesting, on the science of telomeres and their importance to aging. I talk about the relationship between telomeres and our immune system, and how our immune system can protect us from viruses like COVID-19. I also talk about the science behind a supplement called TA65, that has been shown to lengthen our telomeres and also make our immune system younger. People often ask me what my supplement regimen looks like, and I can say I take this supplement regularly. So enjoy today's webinar and subscribe to the podcast show if you want to get notified with future episodes. To me, I'm really excited about talking about telomeres and the effect on cell senescence and aging, and I think you're going to learn a lot today, and especially with COVID, why it's so important this time. So I hope everyone can see my screen, and I just want to first of all mention that I don't have any conflict of interest. I'm not being paid by TA65 for doing this presentation. Though a lot of the slides I have to credit Dr. Joseph Rafali from PhysioAge. These are a lot of his great content I've taken liberally from his presentation. So again, I'd like to thank him for that. And today I want to talk, give you a sense of telomere biology, function, structure, how it changes with age, and how heritable is a telomere length, as well as the role of telomerase. We're going to be talking about how telomere length is associated with chronic disease mortality, the importance of telomere length for cell senescence, and its effect on immune system, as well as we're going to talk about chronic viral infections such as CMV, and I think this will then have some relationship with COVID, which I think you're going to find quite interesting. And then we're going to talk about what is the science out there for what can lengthen telomeres in humans, including a supplement called TX665, and we're going to go over the science, the studies that have been done on that as well. So I'm hoping this is going to really be quite interesting for everyone. If there's any questions, there's a chat box. You can definitely put your questions in, and or you can email us after the presentation. I think some of you will be watching it after the live event. So why do we grow old and die? So you can see this is a very famous graphic. Many of you have seen this before. We now have some understanding of why people grow old and why does aging happen. And scientists have been working on this for quite some time, and we're getting a good understanding. But the question a lot of people ask is, should we even stop it, or should we be reversing it? And some of these are philosophical kind of questions. But I want to put to you that the number one risk factor for death or getting to disease, like a chronic disease, is aging. So, for example, the risk of Alzheimer's is 100-fold higher in your 70s than it is when you're 20. So aging, I want you to consider as an actual disease, and we should think of it like that. So I'd like you to maybe suspend any judgment you have about whether or not we should be stopping or reversing aging, and just bear with me on this presentation, and you can see how we can. It looks like we can have some impact on aging. So we think normally of the body as being in homeostasis, so the balance is, and that's called health. And as when an external factor comes in, like infection or environmental stress or some internal stress, that can push us into out of balance, or we call disease right over here. If normally the body will try to bring us back into balance, and that brings us back into health. But as aging is happening, that is shifting the ability of our body to come back into balance. And so as we're getting older, the immune system is getting in effect weaker or not as robust. and it's having difficulty bringing you back into homeostasis. So that's how aging is happening. It's basically making it more easy for disease to happen. And this basically, I put this up here just so that you can understand that our understanding of aging is that it's primarily a problem of inflammation in the body. And just living and breathing and eating causes reactions in our body. And those reactions cause, free radicals and inflammation. So we can't get away from inflammation. What we can do is try to reduce the amount of inflammation that's happening in the body, and that has been linked to aging and longevity. This slide is here really to talk about that. We're going to have some discussion about viruses, including COVID. And it's been quite a year with our understanding of COVID, and we now understand that the immune system has a major impact about how we respond to COVID, and whether or not we're going to suffer from a severe case of COVID versus a mild case of COVID. And a lot of that's related to our immune system and indirectly through aging. So what are the risk factors that we know for COVID right now? Well, the number one thing is age. And, you probably have heard that, people over 70 or 80 are at, probably tenfold risk compared to somebody who's younger of having a severe case or dying from it. If you have a chronic disease such as hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, or COPD, you're at much higher risk. Males are at higher risk, smokers. If you're obese, you're at higher risk. And if you're non-Caucasian, such as Black or Hispanic, you're also at higher risk. And we're going to be talking about there's underlying reason for why people might be at higher risk. Okay. So let's jump right into telomeres, because telomeres are is one of the hallmarks of aging. So I have a slide here. I actually want to bring it a little closer, so let me just do that really quick. It's this one right here. So here, this is an important slide. It really talks about the 8 hallmarks of aging, and you can see here that telomere attrition is number 2 here. And so I'm going to talk about that one first, because that's something we know quite a bit about. And so these telomeres are the ends of the chromosome. We call them like the caps on top of the chromosome. People compare them to the caps on top of your shoelaces. And as the cells divide, these caps get shorter and shorter. So these telomeres are there to kind of protect the genes so that they don't kind of become unraveled, and that they are functioning well. They keep the chromosomes from basically becoming unstable, and they allow the cells to replicate, because as the next slide is going to show, as the cells divide, the telomeres become shorter every time. So these telomeres protect the cells from, they protect the DNA basically from mutating, from going into what we call senescence, and from dying, the cells from dying. So, one of the first things we understood was that there's a limit to how many times a cell can divide, and that's called the Hayflick Limit. 1961, Leonard Hayflick basically found out that cells could not keep dividing forever. So approximately every cell can divide about 60 times before it ends up, stopping to divide. And either these cells just die, or they enter into what we call senescence, which is kind of like sleeping. They're still alive, but they're kind of in a sleeping state. And this is still valid. And it appears that why these cells are stopping to divide may be because the telomeres are becoming too short. And because every time the cell divides, the telomeres shorten in length. And there becomes a critical point at which point the telomeres cannot become any shorter. So at the end of every chromosome is this repeating sequence of nucleotides, TTA, GGG. So this is to ongoing repeating of this nucleotide. And you can see here that DNA is made up of 4 different types of nucleotide, TAGC, and but the ends of these chromosomes are basically kind of like a repeating sequence. It looks to be like, again, a protection to the chromosome. And as I was saying, every time the cell divides, these telomeres become shorter, and looks like by about 50 base pairs every single time. So we're born with about 10,000 base pairs at birth. You know, any just say between 8,000 to 12,000. And as we're getting older, you know, you have a loss of these telomeres as the cells are dividing. It's approximately 500 kilobytes per year, or 500 base pairs. And over a lifetime, if we started, you know, around 8 or 10, we normally will end up at the end of life with about 5,000. So people lose about 3,000 to 5,000 base pairs over a lifetime, and you know, 50 to 100 base pairs is lost with every division. And mostly these the cells that are dividing a lot, like stem cells or skin cells or gut cells, these cells are dividing a lot, so they're losing their telomeres much quicker. The body has a way to repair, and that's a really critical piece. So it's, yes, there is some loss happening every cell division, but that's because the repair is not fast enough to basically take care of the loss. So and that's really the role of an enzyme called telomerase. So telomerase basically goes on and is able to add base pairs to the end of the chromosome. Different parts of our life, that enzyme can be upregulated or become more active. So I think in the childhood or in womb, the enzyme is more active. So the telomeres are actually increasing in length, and then they begin to shorten the length as you know, we hit the teenage years. So there are different things we can do to influence the activity of this enzyme, and there's a slide about that, so I'm going to show you that. It's right here. Well, let's just talk about that first. That we inherit a certain length, and some of that it's very genetic. Like, you can't do very much about it. It looks like, you know, if you have an older father, you get longer telomeres. If you're a woman, you're going to have longer telomeres than a man. If you're black, you're going to have longer telomeres than a person who's white. So there's some genetic component to how long the telomeres are, and then there's what happens in life. So the activity of your enzyme, your telomerase, will determine how much you're able to repair and lengthen your telomeres. And we're going to talk about this because there are things that we can do to make an impact on that enzyme. And then the amount of stress that's our body's under. So, for example, chronic infections, you know, COVID, for example, injuries to your body. If you're a smoker, you know, have high. If you're obese, you have hypertension, things like that. Those have all been shown to shorten your telomeres. Exercise has been shown to increase your telomeres. So definitely lifestyle factors have an impact on how long your telomeres are, and there are certain things we can do to lengthen them. So it's like a balance here, and this slide just showing that, you know, the telomerase is working on, with lifestyle, diet, stress control, supplements, which we're going to talk about, like TH65, can lengthen your telomeres, and then stressors like, you know, toxins and infections and injuries can shorten your telomeres. So it's a constant balance happening, and some people just naturally may have a better balance than others, and some may not. But again, we can do certain things to keep our telomeres longer. And why is that important? Why is telomere length important? I'm going to move on right to that, because there's a lot of research that shows that longer telomeres is associated with longer life, and shorter telomeres are definitely associated with so many chronic diseases like hypertension, heart disease, dementia, cancer, diabetes. These are all associated with shorter telomeres. And so there's definitely a very strong association there. Let's move on. This one just says, if you have a shorter than average telomere length, you have roughly a 3 times risk of having a heart attack than somebody who has an average telomere length. It basically translates into an age difference of about 11 years, so it's quite significant. This basically shows that they've looked at multiple studies which have shown again that telomere length is associated with the longer the telomere length associated with lower risk of heart disease. And that's independent of other risk factors. Not like, for someone, they've controlled for smoking, and they've controlled for age, and they've controlled for heart disease and cholesterol and so on and so forth. So it's independent. This study looked at, they looked at our large, 64,000 individuals in Copenhagen. And basically they were able to show that if you were in the lowest quartile for the telomere length, you had a 1.4 hazard ratio risk. It means that you are almost 40% greater risk of dying and having heart disease and cancer. So just by looking at the telomere length. So how does this telomere length really have an impact? And I think this is where we jump into the senescence part. Like I said, that there's a point at which the cell needs to keep dividing. And if it cannot divide, it enters into a state of what we call senescence. So when the telomeres become too short, then the cell cannot divide any further, and then it goes into something called senescence, which I like to say it just means like it's a kind of a sleeping state. So why is that a big deal? Why is that a problem? Because so the reason why senescence is a problem is that the cell is kind of still alive, and it somehow it knows that, look, it's at the end of its life, and it starts to secrete growth factors and chemicals out to all the cells around it, saying that look, things are ending here. The situation is not very good. It's sending inflammatory markers all around all the cells around it. So it's sending signals to all the cells around it, saying, look, things are not going well. We should increase inflammation, and then all that is doing is, again, making everything else under more stress and causing aging to basically speed up in all the cells around it. So senescent cells are not a good thing to have around. We all need a little bit of senescent cells because they help with wound healing and so on and so forth. But the cells that enter senescence because of telomeres becoming too short, that's the cell that's kind of somewhat damaged. That's the body does not want it to keep on dividing, because these cells are at risk of becoming cancer cells. So it's the body's way of protecting itself by saying, look, we don't want this cell to become a cancer cell, so we're going to make it stop dividing. That cell is going to now release what is called SASP, SASP, senescence associated secretory phenotype. Sorry, there's a slide on that, but But basically, it's a type of chemicals that are just sending the body that, look, we need to increase inflammation, and then that's increasing aging. So that's how we think that chronic disease is happening and death is happening, because of these increased senescent cells. So that's how it ties back to telomeres. When we have, there's, the body has the system, the immune system has a way of dealing with infection or injury. And when the body's under good, like a young kind of immune system, the T cell, which is one of the immune cells, can come in and right away deal with that infection and get rid of it, and it'll come back to normal. The immune cells will come right back to normal. But as we get older, what ends up happening is that there's a chronic irritation of the immune system. It means that, let's say you get infection, like COVID, and it doesn't go away, it doesn't come back down to normal, because the immune system is so aggravated and inflamed, it stays inflamed. And so that chronic inflammation is leading to aging. In COVID, we're worried about people who have something called long COVID. And what that really is that it's a chronic inflammation. The body's not able to settle down and come back to a normal state. And so these senescent cells that I was talking about before are basically causing this immune system to remain aggravated. So here we are, chronic inflammation in the etiology of disease across lifespan. We can see that, again, so many studies are happening looking at how chronic inflammation is actually the cause of disease. The immune system, the T cell immune system, which is our native immune system. These cells are basically there when we begin life, and as we are exposed to all these different antigens and microbes and so on and so forth, the thymus gland releases these T cells, and these T cells go out and go identify different things, and they basically teach the T cells which things to go after, which microbes and infections we should be targeting. But what ends up happening is that we think at around age 50, this thymus gland becomes much smaller, and these T cells become, in effect, older. Like they become, they've already kind of determined what they're kind of going to look out for, and they're not able to go and look for new things, because it's kind of like the gland has become tired. And so the immune system, as we're getting older, is changing. And so that's happened to everybody. That is just part of life, that the immune system is aging. Some people more than others, depending on what were you exposed to in your life, how much stress were you under, were you a smoker, did you exercise? All these things are influencing how fast your immune system is aging. So just from this, you can see how important it is to keep your immune system young, because that ultimately determines everything about how your body's going to react with the environment. So one of the things that we notice is something called the CD4 CDA ratio. This is a ratio that became, I remember learning about it when people were looking at how HIV patients were doing, because HIV was attacking the T cell system. And so we would look and see this ratio. And as we get older, the ratio of CD4 to CD8, which are types of T cells, decreases. And that you can see is linked. A lower ratio is linked over here to so many different types of chronic diseases. So it's basically a good marker of the health of the immune system. And in COVID, people who had a lower ratio of CD4 to CD8 did worse with COVID. They became sicker, they had more risk of dying. So it's quite an important marker. So again, we want to keep that ratio higher, and that's a reflection of the health of our immune system. again, another slide talking about that. Yeah, declining ratio associated with aging is an indicator of the health of the immune system, and is seen more in people who are older and have obesity, and people who had lower ratios had an increased risk of death. So it's pretty clear what's going on here. Sometimes we hear, older people have less reaction to the vaccine. Why is that happening? Because their immune system is not able to mount a response, because their immune system is older. So they're unable to mount a response, and so the vaccine's not working. That's why they may need, a booster. So why does this happen? Again, the immune system is basically not able to keep on, after so much stimulation. After so much stimulation, the immune system is not able to keep on acting strong anymore, because it's kind of in effect wearing out. And these cells don't die. They enter what we call senescence, and they release all these inflammatory cytokines, which send a signal to the body that we're getting older and inflammation will be increasing. There are some other markers, and I want to mention this one because it's important later on when we talk about a study, a marker called CD28. So it's again another marker on the T cell, and what ends up happening is that as we get older, the CD28 decreases. And so just keep that in mind, because later on we're going to talk about the CD28 marker specifically. So you can see here, as we have, when we're younger and we have naive T cells which have not been exposed to infection or stressors in our life, we all have CD28 positive T cells, and we have long telomeres. Now, as we get exposed to life and infections and things go on in our life, we end up losing the CD28. This becomes negative. We start losing the CD28 marker, and we gain the CD95 marker. So there becomes a shift. It becomes a shift from we're losing the CD28 marker and we're gaining the CD95 markers. Again, this is important because in a study that I'm going to show later on, we were able to change this with a particular supplement, which I'm going to talk about. But you can see here is that this is the marker of the inflammation of the immune system and the immune system getting older. I'm going to move on. This is again how people test these markers, but your doctor can probably do it, or we can get that sent for. But as we're getting older, you can see here that the CD, basically the CD28 negative is increasing. Means we're losing the CD28, and the CD and the 95 is increasing. So this is what's happening with age. And so, basically this cell senescence is tied to so many different things. Chronic inflammation, the mitochondria not working well, DNA damage. It's such an important marker that so many people are looking now at how can we get rid of these senescent cells. So many of these supplements like resveratrol and quercetin and fisetin, all these things, these molecules are looking at how can we get rid of these senescent cells. What I'm going to suggest to you is that one really interesting way of doing this would be to increase telomere length so that senescent cells don't even develop in the first place. And that's what I think is really exciting about the supplement TA65. So as I mentioned before, these senescent cells are secreting what we call SASP. And this SASP has some useful things, like it helps heal wounds, and it's making it's telling your immune system to get active. But too much SASP can lead to cancer, chronic inflammation, aging. You know, it's not a good thing either. So it's always a fine balance, but as we're getting older, more and more SASP is being created, which is causing aging. Let's move on. And like I said, that, you know, the senescence has been linked to so many different chronic diseases, glaucoma, heart disease, liver cirrhosis, diabetes, arthritis, and so on and so forth. So senescence is a hallmark of aging. Let's move on here. So let's talk about a very particular interesting virus, which you know, I learned a lot by even doing this presentation. I was not even so aware. We're not really taught so much about this virus called CMV in medical school. It's really quite interesting. So this virus, which is one of the herpes virus, it's from the herpes family of virus, is very, very common. It means that almost everybody, let's say at the end of life, they say about 80% of people will end up being exposed to CMV in their life. And you don't even know that you get it. Like, it's mostly asymptomatic. You would not know that you have that, got that infection with that type of virus. And it's, you know, similar to Epstein-Barr virus, or if we look at, you know, something like cold sores, that's herpes simplex 2. That's these, you know, people don't normally feel these viruses. They're, you know, they're just living in our body. You know, CMV can sometimes cause mono, 10% of cases of mono, but it basically is staying inside your white blood cells, and it's just staying there, not doing anything. Sometimes it's releasing some virus that goes spread to somebody else, and 30% of kids by age 10 will have this virus, and people convert approximately 1% per year. So as I was saying, by 80 years, 90% of people have been exposed to this virus. Why is this important? Because it looks like it has an effect on the immune system. And so what it's showing is that it has effect on the number of naive T cells. These T cells, again, which are the young T cells, which are ready to fight infections and do things. It basically is lowering those amount of T cells. So people who have been affected by this virus have much lower amounts of those young T cells called CD8 and CD28. And so they have a yearly conference, which I just doing all my reading for this presentation, I thought this is quite impressive. And CMV is arguably the most immunodominant antigen to which the human immune system will be exposed. And after infection, the host must maintain a very large memory of T cell compartments to suppress viral replication. What it's saying here is that, so these doctors are every year getting together. They do a conference on the effect of CMV on aging and the immune system. And what they're basically saying is the immune system is spending a lot of effort to deal with CMV infections. It's chronically stimulating the immune system, and in effect making this immune system older. So it's really quite astounding that this is happening, and it might be a major impact on aging. We just don't know, because most people end up with it by the time you're older. So we don't really understand how much of aging may be caused by the CMV virus. So what there is again, there's something called the immune risk profile. This is when somebody has that CD4 CD8 ratio less than 1, which I told you, those people are at high risk for disease, right? Those are people who are high risk of having a bad COVID infection. So we call those people having a high immune risk profile. Those people tend to be CMV positive. They tend to have less CD28, and they have increased risk of dying at the 2-year, 4-year, and 6-year mark. What's interesting is that in people who end up living to 100 years old, they somehow, even if they tend to they don't tend to lose their CD28 like everyone else. And even if they are CMV positive, they somehow don't act like they've been infected with CMV, like it hasn't affected their immune system. So there's something, there might be something that, some people's bodies are able to do, even if they get infected with CMV, or they're able to keep their immune system younger, and that's really impacting whether or not, how long they're gonna live. So let's go back here to talk about what can we do to keep our telomeres longer, because we now know from what I just mentioned that telomere length directly impacts whether or not a cell will become senescent, and that is a reflection of the immune system of the person. The more senescent cells we have, the older the immune system is. So we want to go back to the beginning and figure out how do we keep those telomeres longer so that the cells don't have to go into senescence and they can keep on dividing as they need to. So like I mentioned, we have a lot of lifestyle things that can be done. Stress reduction, exercise, which I think maybe has a slight increase potentially to increase telomere length. Weight loss. Here's avoidance of CMV. So just not even being exposed to CMV has a chance of keeping your telomeres longer. Diet, low fat intake, omega-3, antioxidants, vitamin D. It's very clear that around 50 for women and maybe a little less so for men, that the changes in menopause have a major impact on the speed of aging. That's for whatever reason, when women lose estrogen, that basically causes the telomeres to start shortening quicker. And you can see here, HRT increases telomere activation. And the telomerase is that enzyme that lengthens the telomeres. What it's saying is that if we give people the hormone replacement therapy, we can actually help them increase their telomere length. And there's a very big study which showed here that growth hormone probably has impact on telomeres as well. There was a famous study which showed that it actually slowed down aging. And then this supplement, which is called TA65, comes from an extract of Astragalus, which is ancient Chinese herb, and I'm going to be talking about that, which has been shown to lengthen telomeres. So very few things have been shown to lengthen. Things have been shown to perhaps slow down the rate of telomere loss. The only thing I think is, again, potentially a little bit, exercise may potentially increase it a little bit. And we're talking about, some pretty substantial exercise. And hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which there was a trial just came out last year, which showed people who got hyperbaric, I think pretty much daily for 3 months, had a slight increase in telomere length. But really, TA65 seems to be the only thing that I've seen out there that can actually lengthen telomere length. And we're going to take you through some of those studies. Let's see here. So it comes from this Astragalus plant. And, oops, 1 sec, sorry about that. Let's go back here. Okay. So I'm going to move right to the study. I mean, the TA65 has been around for over 10 years, and there's been a number of studies in the past, but I think the most recent study is the one that's really interesting. But here, what this study, which is from 2011, 2013, showed this again. We were looking again at the same T cells, and remember those same CD8, CD28. With the CD28, we're losing those as time is going on. And what it's showing is that the people who are taking TA65 had less of those types of old cells of CD28, where they had lost CD28. people, at this stage, these were not randomized trials. This was not a randomized trial, but people were reporting that they were feeling, that they were feeling better. There was a lot of symptomatic, improvement. People are noticing improvement in eyesight, improvement in skin. Their blood biomarkers were improved. Their T cell profile was improved, and the telomere length was increasing. And I want to move on. This is the one I want to really talk. This is the first study that actually was a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial, and they looked at 97 people, and they basically were able to show that after 1 year, people's telomeres increased by 533 base pairs. So that's, if I want to come back to what we talked about, is the number of telomeres, base pairs we lose per year. We lose approximately about 100 base pairs per year. Here, these people actually gained 500 in 1 year. And again, this is a placebo-controlled, double-blind, randomized trial. So clearly, these are all significant, statistically significant values. This was done in 2016. So this is very interesting. It's basically saying, yes, the supplement is increasing telomere length. But I was always a little bit like, okay, yes, telomere length is increasing. We know longer telomeres are helpful. But the next study is more interesting because I'm more interested to see what impact is that having on the immune system, because that's really telling us is there an actual benefit? Yes, we want telomeres length to be longer, but if we can show that the immune system is getting younger, that's even more important to me. So here was a randomized trial, placebo-controlled, for where they looked at 500 people in 9 months. Over 9 months. So they did 4 different dosages, and they basically did a bunch of immune markers. And what they found was that, again, they were able to they looked at those 500 people, and they said, how many of these people have CMV? And what they found was that the people who have CMV had already more sleeping or older T cells at the beginning of the study. And it's quite a bit. Like, we're talking like, the difference here is 220 to 65. Like, I mean, this is a pretty huge difference between a CMV patient and a non-CMV patient at the beginning of the trial. And what the trial showed is that in people who are CMV positive, so had CMV positive only right here, and those were all comers, the trial basically showed that the number of the senescent cells decreased significantly. Like, again, p-value 0.003, 0.002. These are very significant results showing that the number of senescent or old immune cells decreased significantly in both the CMV group and in those and in all the patients. I mean, CMV positive or non-CMV positive. And here's the CMV patients that the naive T cells, which are the ones that are the young T cells that we want to have more of, and you can see that they went up here. They went up from 89 to 97, and so that's a really good sign. Again, this is a significant value. So this happened in the CMV positive patients, and then in the CMV negative patients, we had the exact same thing happen, where they started with 95 of the healthy young immune cells, and they ended up brought up to 107. So, it went in the right direction for both of them, and so it really provides a lot of positive reassurance that this is not just some, false positive result. Again, they looked at the natural killer cells. And again, we don't want to have so many of these types of cells because that's a sign of an old system. And they significantly decreased in CMV positive patients. And again, very significant. Similar to the 2011 study, but again, this study was placebo randomized trial. Again, this, TS65 has been around for since 2007. There's over 10,000 people using TS65. There's been no reports of any adverse effects, and I've personally been using it for a few years, and I've been recommending it to my patients. So how does this now relate back to SARS? CMV is a type of virus. SARS is another type of virus, which it seems to have some long-term, ongoing immune system activation happening. If lengthening the telomere with something like TS65 can impact how the CMV immune system is, then it's very likely that we could be seeing impact with somebody infected with COVID-19 by lengthening their telomeres by taking TS65. It kind of makes sense because there are studies out there that show that those who have shorter telomeres end up doing worse with COVID-19. And after COVID-19, you end up with shorter telomeres than those who did not have COVID-19. So we know that somehow the telomere length and the infection are related. This just talks about that, CMV is one of the family of human herpes viruses. It can just be sitting around for decades in your body you would never know it. Again, like I was saying, that the CMV infection causes your telomeres to shorten. And if you have, it looks like all the herpes viruses are doing this, including CMV. So the number of infections is like stress that's happening on your body is causing your telomeres to shorten. And probably COVID is doing the exact same thing. This slide talks about, there looks to be an association between shorter telomere length and severe COVID-19. Our hypothesis is that if we can lengthen telomeres with TS65, that may have an impact on COVID-19. How we're able to respond back, how we're able to respond to the infection of COVID-19 may be influenced if we have longer telomeres. We don't have a study exactly, but people are looking at, what's the possibility? So what's the take home? Telomere length, I'm hoping today you were able to take this message, is that telomere length is one of the 8 hallmarks of aging that's been identified as the cause of aging. And it's within our control. Like some things are not within our control and some things it looks like could be in our control. Telomere length has been associated with chronic disease, cancer, and how long we live. The burden of viral infections in our life, including CMV and COVID and other herpes viruses, influences the length of our telomeres and can cause the immune system to get older. And if our immune system is older, that influences how we respond to vaccines and how bad we suffer from the actual infection of COVID. So keeping our immune system younger is extremely important. I put down some interesting points here that it might be very interesting to have your CD4 CDA measured. That can be done by your doctor at any lab to see if you are somebody who has already an aged immune system. You can get your IgG titers to look for CMV and other herpes viruses like Epstein-Barr and herpes viruses as well. Check your CMV titers, and that might be interesting to see. Are you at risk? Because if you are, then you're more likely to benefit from a supplement like TS65. It looks like it's definitely interesting to have your telomere length measure. Are you somebody who's been blessed with a higher telomere length because of your genetics and your lifestyle, or are you already starting off with a shorter telomere length? So that's definitely something that's of interest. And then with the studies that are out now, again, I'm extremely excited about the study that's looking at TS65 and its effect on the immune system, because it looks to be making your immune system younger, and that should give us more ability to handle infections such as COVID-19,